Hello and welcome to the first of two information sessions on World Home Economics Day for this year on the theme of building resilient homes and families. I'm Dr. Pamela Turner with the University of Georgia, and I'm the program committee chairperson for the Program Committee on Household Technology and Sustainability. And today we're joined by two family consumer science extension educators from the University of Connecticut. We have Mary Ellen Welch, who is a family consumer science educator, sorry about that, in healthy homes, and Faye Griffiths-Smith, who is a family economics and resource management specialist with the University of Connecticut as well. So we're going to go through and talk about how we can help people who are vulnerable during climate situations, and there's basically vulnerable populations who are homeless or housing insecure. So the first thing we're going to do is ask Faye a question, and she's going to respond, and then we'll kind of go back and forth as we go through the day. First question is, climate resiliency is critical in supporting populations globally. So how did you decide to focus on one of the most vulnerable populations of people, those who are homeless and housing insecure?
As extension educators with the University of Connecticut, we've been focusing on providing preparedness education related to severe weather-related events. Our team is part of the USDA, National Institute of Food and Agriculture Extension Disaster Education Network, known as EDEN. In our first project, our focus was to help people living in shoreline communities in Connecticut and Rhode Island be better prepared for coastal storms. Our second project centered on inland flooding preparedness. Through focus groups and literature review, we learned that people who are experiencing homelessness and those at risk of housing insecurity were among those whom first responders such as police, firefighters, paramedics, EMTs, and social service agency staff are most concerned about when severe weather occurs. This information led us to our third severe weather preparedness project. This time we're focused on reaching people who are unsheltered, meaning that they lack housing, and also people who are housing insecure. They may live in temporary housing or be close to the edge of losing their housing. Our current project is Shelter from the Storm, preparedness education for vulnerable populations.
It's very interesting, the work that you're doing. And Mary Ellen, what are some of the typical challenges that individuals who are homeless or housing insecure may face?
Yes, Pam. Social isolation is from family, friends, and society is common for people who are housing insecure or unsheltered. However, parents that are homeless or housing insecure are also caring for their children. And it's important to remember that children are a population that may be also homeless. And the pandemic presented major challenges for most people. And imagine if you could not shelter at home because you did not have a home to live in. And the unsheltered were at a distinct disadvantage since they didn't have an apartment, a room, or a home where they could safely stay on their own. And shelters work strategically to comply with state mandates for social distancing so they could accommodate individuals and families. And many days, the unsheltered are in search of basic needs of food and water, and many experience true hunger. And adequate sleep and personal hygiene are difficult to sustain. And various weather conditions such as rain, bright sunshine, mild wind can make this population very uncomfortable if you do not have a place to go inside. And some people may have health issues with physical or mental illness. Trauma and substance abuse may also be barriers to being able to sustain shelter. And some incarcerated people, upon release, may become homeless.
It's very interesting. And oftentimes we don't think about those populations. So it's good that you're doing that work in that area. And Faye, what are some of the really unique issues that these individuals may face when there is a severe weather incident?
Well, personal health is likely to be impacted by extended exposure to the elements. When there's heavy rain and thunderstorms, heavy snow, extreme cold, extreme heat, tornadoes, fires, mudslides, and extreme wind, people's health and safety is compromised. Conditions such as extreme cold, heavy snow, or flooding may cause hypothermia, which is a prolonged drop in body temperature that can impact one's ability to think clearly or to move well. Frostbite can also cause permanent damage. In severe cases, amputation of the affected part of the body may be necessary to preserve life. Extreme heat is also a consideration. People who are unsheltered may lack proper clothing and access to shade. They may become overheated, which could lead to hyperthermia. Extreme heat, hypothermia, and extreme cold, hypothermia, both of these conditions can be life-threatening. Exposure to the elements over time can lead to decreased life expectancy. Studies conducted in various parts of the world show differing estimates of the amount of years of life reduced, but clearly the impact is significant. Even when people who have been homeless for a long time do get permanent housing, the impact of those previous years is not erased, and their life expectancy is still shortened. Extreme weather events also may cause severe damage to homes. Additional people may be displaced and also need assistance and other resources. They may have lost clothing and other possessions, and possibly personal records and identification that's often required to receive some forms of assistance.
You've hit on a lot of things that we don't often think about, like the loss of paperwork, the hypothermia, the frostbite, and the long-term effects. So Mary Ellen, when we're looking at climate change as one of the things that may make some of these situations worse, how will that impact some of these challenges?
There are actually many ways. Climate change impacts people globally, nationally, regionally, and also within communities. Severe storms have become more frequent and demonstrate how increases in temperature, humidity, and sea level rise affects the weather and can wreak havoc. And this is anticipated to be a long-term trend. And major storms within the United States have impacted our country from devastating fires in several Western states to hurricanes Katrina and Harvey, which resulted in multiple deaths, extensive flooding, and property devastation in the southern US. And a decade ago, Superstorm Sandy in the Northeast and up the eastern coast destroyed lives and property. And tornadoes have frequently occurred in the Midwest and southern states, and we have all heard of the famous name Tornado Alley. However, tornadoes can occur in many places, and a tornado devastated part of Kentucky in December 2021. Storms also, they alter many people's lives and health, not only during the event, but for long after the event has passed and individuals and families have become displaced, and they may have to move far away from their community, from if they had employment, from family, and they may have to move away with no resources and go completely to a different area or a different state. Outdoor air pollution exposure over time may precipitate respiratory illnesses, disease, and also chronic health problems. And if you consider the hours that unsheltered and housing insecure people spend outside, it's incomparable to people who are sheltered. So being exposed even in normal kind of changeable weather conditions is really difficult for people who do not have a home to go to. And urban areas are densely populated with building and road materials, and they absorb heat and are referred to as heat islands. And vulnerable people are likely to experience heat-related illness more frequently than their suburban or rural counterparts when temperatures soar.
Oh, these are so true. That information is great. And it's actually more even, as we all know, in the US, it's also around the world, these same situations of different kinds of typhoons and hurricanes and things that hit other areas. So what can we do to actually help? What strategies are out there to help promote resiliency?
Promoting resiliency is the key. Healthy, safe, and affordable housing is the gateway to promoting resiliency for people who are housing insecure and unsheltered. And there are many wonderful organizations that focus on serving vulnerable populations and communities, and have begun to repurpose buildings and creating new visions for designing housing for vulnerable populations. And prior to the pandemic, many of our buildings were full, and many of these are now vacant. And so buildings that used to house hotels, malls, factories, businesses, and public buildings are being repurposed, which is a really positive trend. And coordinated access network, that are also called CANs, they offer a range of social services to promote resiliency. And it's basically a streamlined, centralized system that's designed to expedite the process to finding housing for individuals and families that are homeless or housing insecure if they move to a different community. So sometimes, if you can imagine picking up in one community or relocating to a different community far away or state, you may not be aware of what's available. And through the CANS network, this is an excellent system that helps people to be able to relocate without having to start over from the very beginning. And CANS is required by the federal HEARTH Act, which provides federal funding to communities to end homelessness. And rapid rehousing provides a temporary boost to help people get back on their feet, and is used in the short term. And HUD has permanent supportive housing, and this provides long-term leasing or rental assistance and supportive services to households with at least one member, be it an adult or a child, with a disability, and the goal is to achieve housing stability. And then coordinated health services, access to new technologies, such as the internet, as well as education and employment training, are key ways to empower people to enter the workforce and to be able to sustain employment. And public transportation is essential to connect homes to social services, employment, and places where people can access food and goods. So housing is the gateway, but the supportive services are the critical part of making it all work together. And policies are another thing from a broader point of view to consider. And policies that promote resilience should engage the housing insecure and unsheltered people in developing the solutions rather than being told what they must do. It's good to always get the input from the people that you are trying to help. And public policies that explore ways to mitigate the effects of disasters, not only now, but in the future, are essential. And healthy housing is the goal because it is sustainable, it promotes resiliency, and it supports good health for the inhabitants.
Very true. That is critical, that healthy housing piece. And so as we look to build, as home economics professionals, we look to build more resilient families and housing. Faye, what can we do as professionals to help, and as both members of the professional community of home economists, but also as members of our community?
Home economists can engage with vulnerable people, public and private organizations to promote individual and family resiliency in their communities. Finding out what services already exist in your community is a great place to start. If you are not already familiar with these resources, checking with an information and referral network such as InfoLine can be helpful with this. For example, you might want to find out if there is short-term and long-term shelter available in your community. Are there cooling and warming centers nearby? What types of food assistance, such as emergency food pantries and soup kitchens, are available? And when can people access them? If you're interested in reducing homelessness, you may want to focus on policy related to housing at the state or local level. Attend local board or organizational meetings. If you want to learn more, reach out to the local service providers. Find out how you may be able to assist. Are there gaps that they are not able to address that you might be able to assist with? A key point that we want to share is the importance of contacting local service providers directly first before organizing a drive to collect donated items for their guests or clients. They may have sufficient stock of certain items due to previous drives or donated goods, but they may lack other important items. Emergency preparedness is another area that may be of interest. If you haven't had training in emergency preparedness, it's a great idea to learn what you can do to take care of yourself and your family, and also assist neighbors and others in your community. Training may be available locally through a variety of organizations. For example, the Red Cross organization is widely known across the world for the assistance that it provides. The Community Emergency Response Team, known as CERT, provides training to help you in assisting your family and serving your community. It's usually connected with the fire department or a emergency management office for your community. FEMA, which is a part of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, also has helpful information available through the ready.gov website on many aspects of preparedness. There's also the Medical Reserve Corps. That's another group that may be available through community health departments. A medical background isn't always necessary to volunteer with them, but certainly it can be helpful. There are also many organizations involved in climate change at the local, state, and national, as well as international levels. You might start by looking at information provided by government entities and finding out who is involved in your own community. What kinds of changes may impact your area and beyond?
Here are some resources that may be of interest to you.
Well, thank you very much. As you review the resources, and you can always go back and replay that or stop on those sections. We really thank Faye and Mary Ellen for talking about vulnerable populations that are often overlooked as we plan and look ahead to building those more resilient homes and families. And it really is something we have to do together. And as home economists, we have a huge role. And the IFHE has organizations and groups within that work on disaster preparedness. So I encourage you to get involved and to do what you can in your own family, in your community, and within IFHE. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Pam.